Hello fellow tankers, this is Dauntless and welcome to Scout Guide. For this episode I'll be showcasing some of my favorite locations on the map Murovanka for spotting with your light tanks. Now Murovanka is a map that is relatively large and it has a lot of bushes and trees, meaning there are multiple opportunities that you can use your light tank to spot enemy vehicles, but I see a lot of people not using locations correctly, where you're in an awesome big map for lighting and a lot of light tanks just go in and die, or they try to brawl, and I just, they're not as effective as they could be. So hopefully this guide will showcase some of the better locations. And I know a lot of you message me or comment saying, how I missed a certain location. My goal is to show you generalized locations on how to spot with your light tanks. And I don't really know all the positions either. I'm not, this grandmaster at spotting. I just try to show you guys and share the knowledge of the way I play these maps. And so, if you have stuff to share down below, go ahead and feel free to do so. And there are a lot of good locations on this map. And so I'm probably going to miss some of them, but again, hopefully I'll showcase some good tactics on how to play a light tank on this map. With that being said, we'll get things started. When you spawn on the north map, the north base of this map, a lot of players push down onto this area here on the E line, the E7, E6 area, and you would be correct. This is generally how I like to play this map at the very beginning. It gets countered relatively easily by light tanks, and so when you look at the enemy lineup, pay attention to that. There are multiple ways you can play this. My personal favorite is to just push ahead and sit in this bush right here. Now this bush over here works as well. It's a little bit more exposed, and so generally I pick this one. You want to just kind of set yourself up into it, and as long as they don't have any light tanks pushing, you should be able to spot anything coming across. Now right now there are no artillery, so really this is just an intel move, as nothing on your team can really get effective shots right now. But if you do have artillery, it's an easy way to get early damage. And if you have also just where this grand final is sitting, if you have allies like medium tanks that are quick enough and sitting in this area, you'll easily be able to farm about 1,000 at the beginning of the game. Alright, so the biggest mistake I see a lot of players make is not knowing when to move. They either move too prematurely, get themselves killed, or they sit back and they're not able to get enough damage or assist damage because, again, they're just sitting back not knowing what to do. So when you see your team taking a flank like this, be aggressive. Get in there. Most likely they won't focus you out because you're a light tank and they look at you as not much of a threat, and they'll be too busy engaging. Now, as a light tank on a map like this, it is crucial that you are at the head of your team, getting your view range for your allies. See this position that I'm in right here? I am rushing ahead because I know my allies are behind me, and I know that there's tank destroyers hiding over here. This is the position you want to be in. Move around, be really careful, but ultimately be at the head of the team and be a leader. Get up there. Again, don't die, but do this effectively, knowing that you can get away with basically driving around where you're going to cause chaos. You're going to be pushing up there. The tank destroyers aren't going to know what to do. They're going to be taking shots from your allies, and yeah, they might take a shot at you here and there, but ultimately you'll be able to get all that assist damage from your allies if you do it right. So once your allies have taken the south eastern corner of the map, you'll be able to get shots on enemy vehicles that are pushing across trying to counter you, or alternatively that are sitting up on the hill. This is beautiful for farming damage, and a lot of the time your team is going to be winning in this situation. Sometimes the 1-2 line will be in a stalemate like it kind of is now, but as long as your allies are aggressive and push through on the eastern flank, you'll be able to easily win and farm up a lot of damage. Now again, it's crucial that you know when to relocate. In a situation like this, you might think, oh, I'm going to sit back because I don't want to die yet. This is incorrect. You have the enemy completely surrounded, and it's first come first serve in situations like this. Play the edge of the map, stay behind bushes, and try to spot for your allies. You don't always have to engage, but there are a lot of little hills that you can go up and down, and your team is going to be very greedy for damage at this point, so anything that you spot is going to just evaporate within seconds if you do it right. Now, they're not always going to have shots, and they're not always going to make the shots, but it's really better than nothing. If you're in here, you're going to get a lot of assist damage, and hopefully you'll be able to do this without getting killed too early on, but it's the best way I know how to get a lot of spotting damage. Alright, so let's talk about an alternative location that you can take when you're on the northern base. Now, sometimes no one goes to the magical forest and everyone goes down the 1-2 line. Now, this is not a great tactic if you ask me, but in that situation, you don't want to just go over there by yourself and nothing will be able to shoot at what you spot. So this is a location that you can take here, and again, if the enemy gets really aggressive, you want to definitely get out of here as quick as you can, but really all you're going to be doing is popping up and down this hill and getting spots. Now, I know some people like to play light tanks over in this area here. There's a couple bushes you can sit in that extends your view range past here, but really tank destroyers with binocular setup and everything like that are easily going to be able to sit in that location and spot what you're spotting, and really it's just not as effective. And so, if you want to sit back there and camp for the whole game, like, that's fine, but this is a little bit more exciting if you like that active scouting. And you're going to be a real hindrance, because as long as you keep peeking up like this, they're going to keep getting lit, they're going to keep taking fire, and it's going to ultimately help your team push forward. And once your team is actually in position to fight, you're going to be able to do thousands and thousands of assist damage if you play this area correctly. Next, we'll take a look at the southern base. Now, the southern base is a little bit better, and I mean a little bit better than the north base in the opportunities that it presents at the beginning of the game, just because of a certain bush in a certain location that I like to take. It's a little bit risky if you're not careful. You can get yourself killed here by artillery or tank destroyers that might be camping, so be warned when you take this location. See where the bat chat's going? It's basically the same exact bush from the opposite side that I showed you from the north base, and generally I tend to avoid that from the south base because I like this location better, and this is for two reasons. One, this location allows you to spot really deep and get shots. Now, again, sometimes things are going to shoot you, but it's relatively safe for the first, let's say, minute of the game, because things aren't in position yet, and heavy tanks are going to be driving across, and they're going to be panicked that things are shooting at them. They want to get out of harm's way, and they're generally not going to take shots at you, and if they do, they're usually going to miss. Now, the second reason I like this bush better than the center where the Batchat is playing right now is because of Wargaming's recent introduction of tier 10 light tanks. I feel like every game I play there's like 3 or 4 light tanks on both sides, and the odds of you not being countered there are extremely small, and or your ally is going to take that position first, and you don't want to be competing with spotting damage. This allows you to actually get spotting damage as well as take shots on your own, which I think is more fun. But again, don't overstay your welcome. Usually about a minute and a half is about the max you're going to get out of this location, and you're going to want to fall back, because if a tank destroyer is set up on the 8 or 9 line, you're going to get yourself killed really quickly, and artillery is going to just start narrowing in and focusing on you, which is no fun at all. Alright, so just like I showed you with the northern base, it is really crucial that you realize when your team is winning and jump in there. And this works because, one, you're a distraction for the enemy team, and they're going to turn their guns towards you, giving your allies the opportunity to push in, which is awesome. And two, it's going to allow you to farm damage. Now, usually the enemy doesn't pay too much attention to you, but this KB5 really seems to want to kill us for some reason. But again, use the momentum, be the spearhead, because sometimes your team won't push forward, and this can lead to the other flank losing while your team just kind of takes their sweet time to push. And so by you jumping in there and taking the aggro or distracting them, it gives your team the opportunity to really push ahead. And light tanks, even though they are frail and even though they are looked on as weak tanks, really light tanks are kind of a leader tank where you can really take advantage of a certain flank and lead the charge and have a huge impact on the game. Now, again, you want to be aggressive, charge in really boldly here. Generally, I like to stay along this red line, stay down in this area here. There's a lot of cover, so you're not going to get lit as easily. And also, there's a little bit of a dip here. As you can see, it kind of tips your tank. This makes it extremely hard for the enemy to hit you, especially if you're driving around. And this opportunity will give you many shots at the enemy tanks, as well as extending your view range over to the enemy and giving you all those spots. Now, I'll mention one thing. If you are on the northern base and you're finding that your 1-2 line has just fallen and you need to play defense, this location is actually amazing for a light tank. This bush right here, this tree, or this bush right here, you'll be able to sit in it And as the enemies from the southern base push up to the 1-2 line and try to take your base, you'll be able to sit here, and as long as you have allies sitting in the forest, you can actually farm a lot of damage. So it's more of a defensive spot, and I just wanted to mention that because some people don't seem to realize it. And again, I'm pushing in really aggressively here because I know I have a lot of allies behind me, and I want to get that assist damage. Sometimes you'll die here, sometimes you won't, depending on how the enemies focus you out. Right there was really unfortunate that the Yag Tiger was looking at me, but again, you're going to be able to get that assist damage. At the end of these games, it's very common for the enemy to get mopped up really quickly, and you want to try to farm as much damage as possible. Okay, so alternative location for the south base. Again, not, the 1-2 line is sometimes going to be where all your allies push, and it's not going to leave a lot of opportunity for you to get spot damage. So this bush right here is actually great, just because you're able to duck out of harm's way if you do get yourself lit. Unfortunately, from the north, the bush right here doesn't really have that opportunity, because if you get yourself lit here, you're going to die. So right here, you're going to be able to sit and farm a lot of damage if you don't shoot your gun. Now, again, it will be tempting to fire your gun, and sometimes, you can't fire if you want to, but ultimately you're going to want to sit still, maybe be a little bit more in the bush, and if you get lit, just fall back. Unfortunately, once you get yourself lit from this position, it's extremely difficult to get back into it without getting lit again, because they're going to be tank destroyers that are going to be positioned quite closely in the C1, C2 area. And unfortunately, every time you try to take this location again, you're going to get yourself lit. And so, kind of take that with a grain of salt, and don't fire your gun unless you really have a good shot or you really want to. But once you do expose your position like that, you're really going to just have to peek up and down right here and try to get spots for your team. And you can get shots if you have good gun depression, and as long as you are peeking in and out, you're going to be able to extend your view range past into the C1, C2 area, and hopefully light those pesky tank destroyers for your allies. I personally like to sit in the bush longer, just because you're going to be able to farm a lot more assist damage without getting lit, as long as you have a really good camouflage crew. But some people find it more interesting to take shots because it's a little bit more dynamic. Alright, so I have a couple clips that I want to show you as kind of a bonus that you can do in light tanks, and unfortunately these locations don't really exist on the northern map or the northern base as far as I know, but these locations work amazing if you play them correctly. And now it's, again, very team dependent and very situational. But if you use it right, it can actually be very, very beneficial for your team. Now this bush right here is awesome, and if you do get yourself lit, it's easy to duck down this way and get yourself out of harm's way. But this location works well if you have a lot of tank destroyers and artillery sitting back in the K line. Now, a lot of the time, this 1-2 line will fall, and your allies will be somewhat blind to the damage or to the tanks that are pushing across. And as long as you have a really good trained crew, you can actually sit up in this bush and light these heavy tanks as they push across. And most of the time, heavy tanks aren't going to be coming up this hill because they're not going to want to expose themselves as much. And so you're going to be able to sit here, and as long as they don't get too close to you, hopefully, you won't get lit as long as you don't fire your gun, and you're going to be able to just farm a lot of assist damage. And this is, again, very situational. It doesn't always happen like this, but you can be very beneficial to your team by sitting back like this, or sitting forward and getting those spots for your team. And when you do find that the moment is right, you can fire your gun and finish off certain enemy tanks. Alright, so I just wanted to highlight one more thing for you guys before I ended this episode, and it's that when you're on the south base, another situation can present itself, much like this, where the majority of your team is camping on the 1-2 line, and the enemies are pushing across from the southeastern flank. Now when this happens, it's very easy for them to approach your base without getting lit because of all the trees that they can push up to, and your team can actually get completely surrounded and lose very quickly. But this middle area, especially right here where this cap is, it's kind of a no-go zone for a lot of enemy tanks, a lot of the time they'll push through the city or they'll push around this border here, and they'll completely ignore the open center of this map right here where this cap is. Now if you have good camouflage crew and you sit here, you can easily sit in this location without getting lit and spot and get a lot of spotting damage for your allies as they sit up on this hill and shoot. And this can actually really help your team win these situations, because if you have tanks that are invisible shooting at you from this location as well as shooting at you from the other location, from the 1-2 line, you're going to be absolutely screwed. So this is a good location to take. Don't be afraid to take these defensive spotting locations towards the end of games, because you can really farm a lot of assist damage if you play it right, and ultimately it's going to help you win more games by knowing these locations and using them correctly. Anyway guys, that was my guide on how to spot on Murovanka in a light tank. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more content like this in the future. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.